I want to welcome everyone to the committee meeting this morning. Sharon, it looks like we have two newbies with us today. I believe that the CLA is Mr. Torres.
Yes,
is that
sir.
correct?
Yes.
And the city attorney, is it Mr. Dagger, as in Dagger?
Yes, it is, sir.
Did you get a lot of ribbing as a kid, or was that considered a cool? Because it's kind of cool now.
I was a lot bigger than all the other kids, so no.
You were bigger than the other kids? Yeah, my name is Herb Dagger. With a D, Dagger. Okay. So anyway, Mr. City Attorney, we do not have a quorum at this time, but I don't want to keep all of the people waiting, so we will operate any action at this juncture will be a communique from the chair. We generally start out with our consent calendar. We have several items on the consent calendar. Mr. Torres, if we could start with you, sir, reading item 3.
Okay. Item number 3 are CRA and CAO reports relative to authority to implement an early retirement incentive package and for the California Public Employee Retirement System to grant 2 additional years of service credit for employees in certain designated classifications.
Okay, there's still some issues where it relates to this item, so we will continue item 3. That brings us to item 4.
Item number 4 are CRA and CLA reports relative to the acquisition of city property located outside of the Los Angeles Harbor Industrial Center redevelopment project area at the southeast corner of L Street and LeCouvre Avenue for development of affordable housing. The acquisition is for a total cost not to exceed $960,000.
Okay, on item 4, we'll adopt the CLA report. That brings us to item 5.
Item number 5 are CRA and CLA reports relative to amending redevelopment survey area number 8 for the Los Angeles Harbor Industrial Center redevelopment project area to include properties located in the Port of Los Angeles Community Plan area and authority to the CRA to enter into a memorandum of understanding with the Harbor Department.
Okay, on item 5, we shall continue that as well. That brings us to item 6.
Item number 6 are CRA and CLA reports relative to the reduction of 8 moderate income housing units, the recordation of 55-year covenants, and the approval of a replacement housing plan for the Simone Hotel located 520 South San Julian Street to allow for on-site support services.
Okay, on item 6, we'll adopt the CLA report. That brings us to item 7.
Item number 7 are CRA and CAO reports relative to a development agreement with Mercy Housing California 46 for the development of CRA-owned property at 3011 to 3023 Southwestern Avenue for a proposed affordable housing project.
Okay, now,
This item has been scheduled for today's council meeting.
could you give me the address again on that item?
3011 to 3023 Southwestern Avenue.
Does anybody here know what council district that is?
I believe it's 10.
I didn't hear you, Mr. Torres.
10, sir? Your council district?
So I think the appropriate action on that item would be to adopt the CAO report so that we could put it on the council agenda today. Mr. City Attorney, don't you agree?
Yes, I do.
All right, that brings us to, on that, we'll adopt the CAO report. That brings us to item 8.
Item 8 are LAHD and CAO reports relative to the issuance of tax-exempt multifamily mortgage revenue notes for the Vendome Palms apartment project located at 975 North Vendome Street. The issuance is up for up to $6,196,780.
And even though that is not in Council District 10, I will suggest that as a communique from the chair, we adopt the CAO report with recommendation number 1.
On this item has been scheduled for the July 23rd, 2010 council meeting.
All righty. We've just been joined by Richard Alarcon, and that brings us to item 9.
Item 9 are CDD and CAO reports relative to executing a new interagency agreement with the Housing Authority of the City of Los Angeles. The agreement is for the preparation of environmental documentation.
Okay, on item 9, we will adopt the CAO report, and that brings us to item 10.
Item 10 are CDD and CAO reports relative to staffing the Human Relations Commission within the CDD. This item has also been referred to the Personnel Committee.
Okay, so I know there's still some concerns where it relates to this, but we will adopt the CAO report, and by the time this goes to council, we should be able to work out those issues. So on item 10, we will adopt the CAO report. So, Mr. City Attorney, on all of the action items of today, they will all be deemed approved as a communique from the chair. If that's okay with you.
Yes, sir.
Okay, Sharon, we need to put together a motion that I don't think in the future we want to have two new people. We only have one at a time, so we want to direct the city attorney's office and the CLA's office to work together to make sure that there's only one new person at a time. And so far, I'm thoroughly impressed with these two gentlemen, so you're welcome back anytime. Your probation will be short, okay? You just keep fighting the good fight. That brings us, Mr. Torres, to item 1.
Okay, item number 1 is a communication from the mayor relative to the reappointment of Mr. Martin Lee to the Affordable Housing Commission for the term ending June 30, 2015.
Okay, Mr. Lee, please come forward. You look familiar.
Yes, we chatted last November.
I
We talked a lot about football, too.
Well, that I do remember. And I'm just saddened that your reappointment is now instead of, let's say, September-ish, when we were, right in the college football season and the NFL as well. Even though we could talk about SC and the changes there, but I think we'll talk about you. So why don't you just, what I like to do when individuals are being reappointed, I want to, so you got your feet wet, you had your experience, now you're being afforded an opportunity for another term. How do you see this? What's different today than yesterday?
Well, as you had mentioned, I think I'm getting up to speed in terms of learning more about how the Affordable Housing Commission works in coordination with the Housing Department. And I also would like to add that I'm very impressed with the work that the Housing Department staff has done in terms of making sure that the affordable housing and the compliance with all the regulations, because I was appalled to see some of the living conditions some of the people, the citizens of Los Angeles are living under. And unfortunately, because of the budgetary cuts, there's very few inspectors available, and they have a monumental job in terms of making sure that landlords comply. But on the other hand, I also know that it's not just a one-way street. We've been able to chat with both landlords and tenants. So I think it's been a very equal process in terms of making sure that we have a fair hearings for people that are involved in affordable housing.
Now, you mentioned our budget challenges.
Yes.
Every city entity is challenged, to say the least, staff reductions or what have you. So how do you intend on moving forward, even though you start kind of like handicapped?
Well, fortunately, the Housing Department, they have a lot of separate funding, which is not reliant on the general funding, which is such a critical issue for Los Angeles, for the citizens of Los Angeles. So the new general manager has been excellent in terms of getting up to speed. The staff has been excellent in terms of laying out specifically at every meeting that we have an update in terms of the finances and what's going on in terms of personnel as well, to try to maintain the most, to be as effective as possible.
Yeah, well, were you appointed, was Mercedes still on board as the director of the housing department, or had she already left to go?
She had already left.
Yeah, well, we were fortunate in the city because she put together, I think, a real good infrastructure.
Yes.
And then the mayor brought in Russ, who did, I think, a great job of keeping everything on board, and I'm impressed with Doug as well.
Yes.
And I'm equally impressed with your colleagues on the commission and impressed with you. So with that said, I have no questions, and Mr. Alicorn does not either. So as a communique from the chair, you will be recommended for reappointment to the full council, and it looks as though that's today.
Yes, it is. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Lee. Before we go to the next item, or is this on number 11? Annie?
Yes.
Annie, I'm going to get to you, but it's not now. Okay. Item 2.
Item number 2 is a communication from the council president relative to the appointment of Mr. Todd Sargent to the Industrial Development Authority Board of Directors.
Please come forward. Good morning, sir. Now, Mr. City Attorney,
Yes, sir.
I just been hit with a lightning bolt. Sergeant Dagger. Now, what kind of name is that? Sergeant Dagger. Okay, Mr.
It's almost as good as Smith and Wesson, sir.
Oh, boy, he's quick. Wow. Avanya, he can come back anytime. He's quick. And when he said almost, and Mr. Smith is going to be leaving, so I don't know.
Need a new partner then.
Well, maybe we can get somebody to change their name, because Rosendahl Wesson just doesn't have the ring of Smith Wesson. And Smith and I sit directly next to each other, and I inherit Mr. Rosendahl once. Mitch and Wesson. We'll see. I can live with that. All right, Mr. Sargent, tell us a little bit about yourself and what is it that you hope to accomplish. You're Mr. Garcetti's selected individual, so talk to us if you would.
Sure. My name is Todd Sargent. I'm a management consultant with Hitachi Consulting. I run our California practice for organizational transformation services. So I work across industry, helping organizations with people, process, and technology changes, and helping to ease the changes into their organizations. My interest in this committee really is around economic development and job creation that comes from the issuance of these conduit-issued bonds. And as I've gotten to know some of the other members of the committee and the staff, I just see it's a great opportunity to serve the people of Los Angeles and to really look at interesting ways for us to help small business and mid-sized business growth.
Well, have you served on any other city-related, is this the
Never,
first?
first time. I've never even been in City Hall today.
Impressed?
It's pretty.
Not till you, wait till you go downstairs. Yeah, there were things that Richard and I wanted to do, but wouldn't allow us. It's always nice, not just nice, but to see individuals who are going to volunteer their time to try to make the city a better place. You guys are going to get little to no fanfare. There will be a lot of folks that will never even know your name, but all of us are concerned about job development, and we recognize that the majority of the new jobs that are created are, small operations, borderline mom and pops. So anything that you can do to help Los Angelinos go to work and keep a job, we would definitely be interested in. So as a communication from the chair, we will recommend your appointment as well. And again, today in council chambers at 10, what I will attempt to do, and sometimes I am successful, is I'm going to ask my other colleagues to just push you through without any questions, because sometimes once they get on a roll, they're on a roll. And my advice to you would be, in the event that you are questioned, less is more. All right, with that said, we will recommend you to the full body later today. That brings us, Mr. Torres, to what?
Item 11 are CRA and CLA reports relative to amending the Healthy Neighborhoods Policy to include LEED certification requirements for financially assisted projects.
Okay, we have a public speaker on that item, and it's Ann Williams, representing the Central City Association.
Good morning. I'm Ann Williams with the Central City Association. We have submitted a detailed letter on this matter, but I'm here to highlight a few things today. Central City Association recognizes the importance of developing sustainable building standards, and we share in the city's vision to reduce its carbon footprint. However, we must think twice before imposing additional requirements on projects that already are facing formidable challenges in this economy. First, the timing of the policy is terrible. Adding additional burdens on the decimated real estate industry will impede our economic recovery, particularly in an industry that faces unemployment rates twice that of the overall unemployment rate. Second, the citywide green building ordinance must be evaluated before Healthy Neighborhoods is adopted. Although the green building ordinance took effect in 2008, the slowdown in the housing or in the development market since then means that we have not been able to gauge the impact of that ordinance. Third, the investment threshold of $1 million is too low and also is not tied to any meaningful analysis about how that number was reached. Any investment threshold should also be tied to an appropriate price index to adjust for rising inflation over the years. Fourth and finally, any policy that the city does adopt must contain a safe harbor provision to ensure that developers are not unfairly penalized when LEED certification cannot be obtained due to matters outside of the developer's control. Thank you for your consideration of our input on this issue of great importance to the development community.
Thank you very much. If we could bring up staff now. And know that there are challenges where it relates to this policy, and some of the concerns that you mentioned have merit, and it is our plan to delve into those concerns and see if we can't put this together where it has where it can be a win-win. So with that said, welcome. And do any of you have cool names? What's your name?
Nick Saponara.
Wait, what now?
Nick Saponara.
It sounds like, it could be a baseball name. Rocky Calavito, Rick. And your name, sir?
Jason Neville.
What?
Jason Neville.
Oh, you?
New Orleans, Louisiana.
Yeah, all right. Okay, who's going to start?
I can give a brief introduction to the Healthy Neighborhoods Policy and the amendment before you. In early 2008, the CRA adopted the original Healthy Neighborhoods Policy, which affirmed basically sustainability as a core principle of the agency. Approximately 1 year later, in early 2009, we began working on the technical implementations of that, namely the green building standards that would be associated with significant investment of public funds. That manifested last summer in July of 2009 with the board adopting an amendment to the Healthy Neighborhoods Policy, which would require LEED certification at the silver level for projects that receive $1 million of public investment of CRA funds, as well as meet the thresholds that trigger the green building ordinance of the City of Los Angeles, that being either 50,000 square feet or 50 residential units. That process of developing the Healthy Neighborhoods Amendment included extensive outreach to stakeholder groups. There were 3 focus groups held, engaged more than 40 stakeholders in the private, public, and nonprofit sectors, including affordable housing developers. We also engaged with the Central City Association in hearing some of their concerns and worked very diligently to incorporate some of those recommendations. And I'm happy to speak to some of the issues which were raised, and I want to clarify a couple of points. In particular, with regard to safe harbor provisions, through those conversations with CCA, we did build into the Healthy Neighborhoods policy a couple of conditions whereby a project can be exempted from the policy if there are extraordinary circumstances, as well as if a project was subject to the policy and for one reason or another, no fault of the developer, was unable to receive the required certification, an appeal could be made and no remedies would be imposed if conditions of compliance were up through the certification were evidenced.
Okay. Ms. Neville, you want to?
Part of when we had developed the policy, in addition to the stakeholder outreach, it included a lot of work that we've been doing ongoing with building and safety and the rest of the city family to make sure that the CRA's proposed LEED Silver policy would be consistent with the city's green building ordinance. So as Nick mentioned, and I just want to kind of make this point clear, that the requirement is for LEED Silver on a project that receives $1 million or more of CRA assistance. So that, and only for projects that are 50 units or more, 50,000 square feet or more, which is the threshold of the green building ordinance. So in effect, buildings that would already be required to meet the city's green building ordinance at the LEED certified level, if they received CRA assistance of $1 million or more, would go up to the next level in the LEED rating system, which is from certified to silver. So effectively, what it means is that with $1 million or more, we take it from the city's green building ordinance at the certified level to the silver level.
So,
and then they would be eligible for the city's already established incentives for going to LEED Silver, the expedited processing and so forth.
so have we compared, because there's some new state regs, have we compared our city regs to the state regs, and how do they shake out?
Well, that's a very good question. That's something that's actually developing as we speak. Just yesterday afternoon, Building and Safety was before Plum, introducing the Cal Green Building Code, which will be effective January 1 of 2011. And what's essentially happened over the past year or so is that the state, in many ways, has started to begin to catch up with local municipalities and their green building ordinances. So the Cal Green Code, which will be kind of baseline standard for all building throughout the state of California, will be adopted by the City of Los Angeles and in effect as of January 1, 2011. That includes mandatory baseline requirements. The direction, it appears, of the Building and Safety Department is to layer some voluntary measures on top of that, which would essentially bring it more in line with the LEED system and the Green Building Ordinance currently in place. There has been some discussion, and I think this is something that will be ongoing in the months ahead, of as that Green Building Code is adopted locally and built up to align with Green Building Ordinance, that the Green Building Ordinance, as we know it, would sunset at the end of this year. And that's something that, like I say, is developing as we speak, and we're monitoring that quite closely.
Okay, this threshold of $1 million, how did we select that number?
In part, it was a response to some of our stakeholder outreach, which had said that they wanted CRA standards not only to be consistent with the City of Los Angeles' standards, but also internally consistent. So some of our other community benefits policies, like construction careers, the threshold is $1 million of CRA investment. So we wanted to do our best to align our policies to make it consistent.
It's $1 million, just $1 million.
Or more, yes, sir.
The
Or built on, if a project's built on CRA-owned land.
There are a couple of things that you attach a number to, and that's it, without connecting it to something so that there's some kind of an automatic increase as time goes by. I mean, just off the top of my head, in the state, in fact, Senator Alicorn then and Assemblyman Wesson then, there were some provisions to our limits on fundraising, but they tied and I don't remember what they tied it to, so that every year it would either grow or every other year or what have you. Here in the city of Los Angeles, they have not done that, and they do that because media cost increase and a variety of other things. Have we had discussions about something like that? It's just sometimes when you just set in stone a number that is not adjusted, it creates problems down the line.
That was not an issue that was raised or discussed with our stakeholders as the policy was being developed. In terms of existing CRA policy, I believe the only policy which is tied to an index is the living wage policy, which naturally would have to rise with the cost of living.
Well, just because it didn't come up doesn't mean we shouldn't have a discussion about
Certainly.
it. Okay. Another, yeah, it did. Another thing, and I have, since I've been here, in fact, I sat next to Fran Pavley when I was in the legislature, and anybody that knows Fran Pavley knows that she's a big environmentalist, and because I sat next to her, I wound up getting a 100% environmental rating and was given an environmental award. So I'm sensitized.
I thought it was you that was driving her phone.
No, I just helped. But with that said, our economy is struggling, and I think that begs the question of timing. And because what we want to do is we want to build things, and we want to put people back to work. Is this the time to implement something that some people feel, as stated earlier by Ms. Williams, that could slow the recovery down?
I certainly understand that point, and when this policy was first adopted by the board in July of 09, certainly the economy was in a difficult place at that time as well. I think the overarching issue with sustainable development is that it's not only good for the environment, but it's also good business practice. And I think what we're seeing increasingly is the cost of LEED and cost of green building coming down as the market begins to transform, the adoption of CalGreen being evidence of the fact that transformation really taking effect. Accordingly, the cost of these measures becomes marginalized, and we get closer to cost neutrality, if not cost benefit. There are a lot of aspects of sustainable development that increase the asset value, rental rates, lease up, reduce operating costs that actually have financial benefits to projects, both for the end user as well as in some cases for the developer. So I think that the movement we're seeing even coming out of Washington, D.C., despite the economy, is still full steam ahead on the issue of sustainability because of the economic case associated with that.
Richard, do you have any questions?
No, I mean, I recognize the arguments raised by Central City Association, but I do agree that the policies that are coming down from Washington would tend to suggest that if we're not in line with those policies, that we might lose funding. And since these are taxpayer dollars, it would seem that it would be appropriate to ask that we impose standards that meet the next generation's needs. In fact, I believe the LEED standards are weak, when it comes to, for example, we had this major discussion about energy. The dynamics that are going to occur in energy over the next year or two are going to be such that builders are going to have to focus on entirely new designs of housing and commercial construction. So I think it's better to get ahead of that curve, and not because we think it's going to challenge business, but because we think it's going to position business for a better future. So I understand the arguments of the CCA, but I just think in the long run we're going to do fine. And by the way, I initiated the building of the first sustainable building in the city of Los Angeles, the Lakeview Terrace Library. And
Really?
at that time, the city architect was opposed to sustainable development, and because of that project, he became an advocate for sustainable development. And in fact, developed a career after he left the city in consulting on sustainable development. So sometimes, dinosaurs die hard, but we've got a future to consider, and the future is in environmental development.
And I agree, just because it's challenging doesn't mean we shouldn't do it. And I think we're moving in the right direction. I do think that it's not quite ready yet. I think you're moving in the right direction, but I think we'll have you come back and let's deal with the $1 million threshold issue. I want to see a very detailed comparison as to how this will mesh or compare to the new state requirements. Take a copy of the document that was presented by the CCA and see if there are any things in there that make sense, and if they do, if there's a way to incorporate this into the plan, and then come back before this committee and let's see if we can't make something happen. You hear a lot about the wave of the future and the green economy, and you got to do this and you have to do that. Without a doubt, that is coming. And I think that it's important for the city of Los Angeles to be teed up so that we can draw down any and every bit of federal money that's available. The worst thing that we could do is to not move forward and put ourselves in a position where we're passed or surpassed by other areas within the country. Because once this really starts to take off, it could generate a lot of phenomenal jobs for people from California, people from Los Angeles. When you travel to other states, and I jokingly say this all the time, but it's really not a joke, the winds in this country blow from the west to the east. So people look to us and they expect California really to be in the lead where it relates to this, because we are these kind of exotic, artsy-fartsy type folk. And I do think there's a lot of money in this, and it's a lot of goodness in this, because we are...
Mr. Chair, what was that technical term?
Goodness. Now, I'm not going to artsy, whatsy. And again, we won't be here forever. We're just caretakers, and anything that we can do to help sustain, our corner of the sky, we want to do that. So, with that said, as a communique from the chair, we'll ask you to report back on the various things that I suggested and work with staff to come up with an appropriate time as to when that report back should be. It should not be too long, but I want to give you enough time so that you can really dot the I's and cross the T's. And I thank both of you for coming. Mr. Torres, is there any more business before this committee?
That clears the desk, sir.
Then this committee is adjourned.